Hello to everyone. I'm Minister Tim White, and I'm sitting with Pastor Daryl Sneed from the Ben Washington Baptist Church, and we haven't done one of these sit-down question and answers in quite a while. We call it the Pastor's Corner. This gives the pastor and I a chance to talk about things that are going on in the world, church world, and whatever comes to mind. So today we're going to cover a few things, and there are so many different things that are going on in the world, Pastor. I don't know where I want to start.
Well, it's been a while since we've been able to do the Pastor's Corner, and certainly a lot has transpired in the meantime. And so we have a wide range of topics to cover.
Yeah, I tell you what. Why don't we? What seems to be most prevalent is the coronavirus that has been running rampant for going on a year now. In a couple of months, it'll be a year, and this thing has come up by surprise, and is such a silent and deadly killer. And it's taken out so many lives that people are trying their best to cope with. What do you think, how do you feel like the protocols have been as far as people say that the president didn't do things that it should have been done? What could we have done other than what has been done with the coronavirus attack?
Well, that's a good question. I would say the first thing that perhaps should have been done that was not done was to take the virus seriously. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a hoax that was created by any political party. We had words, a warning that this virus was deadly, and we should have taken some steps. And so the first thing that needed to be done was to tell the truth. Supposedly, he knew it was deadly, but he wanted to generate, he being the president, Trump at the time, he wanted to generate a strong mindset and positivity, but American people can handle the truth. And so because many Americans were fed misinformation, mm-hmm. Some of them did not take the warnings about safe distancing, social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands. And so because of that, at the time of this taping, we've lost 400,000. I do believe that a lot of people died that should not have died simply because we did not have the accurate information. Mm-hmm. We did not take it seriously in the beginning as a nation, and we did not take a proactive step to address it both at the federal level and the local level. And so we were dealing with economic concerns, and we should have been looking at the whole total package, which is human life. You cannot regain a life that's lost. You can open up a business again, but once a life is taken, that life is gone.
Misinformation is a big impact on people, society as a whole, especially when it comes from the top down. Our government officials who we elect to put into office and who are supposed to lead us with a great amount of integrity. And as we can see, that misinformation can have a devastating effect on the public. Not only that, we see where hospitals, I mean, not in my lifetime have I ever seen where you couldn't go to the doctor or couldn't be admitted into the hospital because of the coronavirus. And it seems as though hospitals are doing everything they can to accommodate people. Even people are being turned away. What do you think about that? That's never happened in your lifetime. We're similar to the same age, aren't we?
Well, the thing that I would say is, first of all, my entire family, the four of us that lived in the house, mm-hmm. we all contracted the virus.
Yes, you did.
I ended up having to take my mother-in-law to the hospital, and the emergency room was packed. And the first day that she was admitted, she did not get a room because the rooms were already taken. And so I think you're getting hospitals that are maxing out, both not just in cities, but also in rural areas. And so again, it's something that we need to get under control. It's something that we need to be strategic. I do understand people are concerned about the correct information. And I can certainly understand in the African American community where there may be questions about whether to trust the government. We experienced as a people the government using our African American men as guinea pigs for their own personal experiments. So the question is, can we trust them? And I think that's a personal choice. I, for one, as soon as the vaccine is available, I plan to take the vaccine. I certainly understand, again, wanting to get the best information. And so I would encourage anyone out there to get the best information, ask the right questions, talk to your doctors, talk to people who had the vaccine, see what the side effects are, and if you're comfortable and you choose to take the vaccine, then certainly make sure that you take it within the prescribed time. I think there's one vaccine, you take it, you get 2 shots, one and 21 days later, one a month later, and so I'm just wanting to make sure that all of our members of our church have as much information as possible to make an informed decision. And again, I do think the misinformation that is out there has caused a lot of people to question, can I believe what the government is saying? Can I believe the doctors? And I would say, do your research, do your homework, and then draw your own conclusions.
Though there are 2 vaccines, I think, from a company, Moderna and Pfizer, and I think the Pfizer vaccine has to be kept at such a low temperature, and my understanding that some of the storage problems with that, because of that, are problematic, and that once a package is open, say it's only good for, I think, 5 hours, has to be used within the 5 hours. And I was reading the newspaper report that you go and you have to wait in line, for so long to get the vaccine. You're also pushing it to the edge of when it may not be effective at all. Now, there are some people who just don't take vaccines, let alone the controversy that's come around the coronavirus vaccine. I, for one, have only had a flu vaccine as of last year. My first time ever having a flu vaccine. I think I took some pneumonia vaccines, but I'm one of those persons, vaccines throughout my life, I've just never taken any. Until now. The jury is still out right now for the coronavirus vaccine. I have a wait and see attitude, but who knows? That may change. My attitude was built before there was a coronavirus vaccine, so now that there is one, my wife mentioned to me last night that I can get them at her place of business now. So we'll see what happens there. The vaccine or coronavirus has caused a lot of people to change their lifestyles. We're distancing, the social distancing apart. We've been wearing a mask ever since we've been in the room together, except for now. But it has really had a devastating impact on some people, their business. They have closed and families are suffering financially. What do you think about the government's bailout of, I think, $1,200 the first round, $600 the second round? I think Joe Biden, incoming president at the time of the taking, be president, if you will, or be in inaugurations tomorrow. He plans on, I think, rolling out another $1,200 or $2,000. What do you think about that? Is that enough? I know it should help. I mean, you give me $1,200, it will help. What do you think about that plan of how the government should be basically stepping in at a time like this? It's a crisis. We're in a crisis, and the government's job is to deal with these things. Unfortunately, not the way it should have been from the beginning, but what is your thoughts on what the government is trying to do now as far as helping people financially?
Well, I will tell you, my heart bleeds for those individuals whose businesses have suffered, for individuals who've lost their jobs, who had hours, cut back. We opened up a food pantry ministry here at Ben Washington in the summer of 2020, and all across the North Texas area, we saw long lines of families who were waiting for food, and so because there was a need. And so the government's effort to aid its citizens, I think it is warranted. And I would also add that the previous efforts to provide assistance to families. Didn't just go to families, it went to large corporations. And there were many corporations who benefited, in my opinion, needlessly at the expense of individual families. So I think the government's first and foremost responsibility is to aid its citizens during a time of hurt. And so my prayer is that wisdom will prevail, that the needs will be met, that fraud will be eliminated or greatly reduced. But anything that we can do to help families get through this time economically, 2020 has been a tough year, and it's projected that 2021 will be a tough year. And so we just need to make sure that we're praying for individuals and families, and that we're doing our part to assist those individuals that are in need. So I support anything that our Congress can do, our president can do, and as well as our state and local officials.
You know, we talked before a little bit about people returning to church, because COVID-19 has also affected the church in many ways, especially being able to come together and to congregate. And we're now doing church online through Zoom classes or you know, for Sunday school classes, Bible study classes, things of that nature. So there's a concern, I believe, for churches to, when you get comfortable in your own home and being able to be a part of a worship service via our technological, you know, advances that we've made, Zoom namely, when it's safe to return to the sanctuary, how do you think people might feel about that? When you get comfortable at home, you know, sometimes it's a pajama party, but then again, I know people who miss fellowship and being around people. But is that a concern that you might have for the church, of people returning to the sanctuary when the doors open again?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to look the camera in the face and say, as a pastor, I'm definitely going to keep the interest of our health of our members in mind as to when it's best to open. And certainly, I've been praying. A sermon I preached just recently about coming out of the rain was born out of the desire to know when is it safe to return to in-person worship. I think there are a lot of pastors who are struggling with their desire to be back in fellowship with their members, their congregation, but at the same time wanting to make sure that the members are safe. And so here in Washington, we've been making plans for what I believe is an eventual in-person worship experience this 2021 year. We've done some things. Sister Rocky Ruffin has done a fantastic job in putting together our COVID protocols, which we plan to put online very shortly, which we plan to also during our worship services to remind members these are the protocols that will be in place when you come back. I do believe that there are going to be some people who are going to be reluctant to come back even after a period of time has passed in which the vaccines have rolled out, herd immunity has been accomplished. There are some who are going to be reluctant to come back because of fear. There are others who are going to be reluctant to come back because of comfort in having been away so long. The scripture teaches, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. And so as a pastor, you want to obey the word. You know, there are some benefits that you gain from being able to fellowship in person with your brothers and sisters. And I am aware that there's a possibility that some who were with us when we started the pandemic may not return because there's always this, you get comfortable. You know, anytime you get out of your routine, you get comfortable. And so there are some things that I want to make sure that, number one, as soon as it's safe, you come back. Number two, when you come back, you need to know that we're going to do everything in our part to make sure that we've put the protocols in place for your safety. So some of the things that we've talked about doing, Minister White, is to have multiple services. So not just 2 services, but multiple services on Sunday. Could be 3. We could even do a Saturday service. We also want to make sure that our services are shorter. We also want to make sure that we give space between our services to allow for the sanctuary to be disinfected, making sure that members have opportunities to avail themselves to washing of their hands, getting hand sanitizers. We have some things in place to make sure that members get their temperatures checked when they come in. Certainly when we first began, we want to make sure that social distancing is going on, as well as people wearing a mask. I just believe safety is important, but I also believe that there's a balance, and you can have in-person worship and be safe at the same time. I constantly look at the CDC recommendations, guidelines. I look at the trends. At this particular time, we have 400,000. We very well could have 500,000 deaths by the end of February at the rate we're going. And so I want to make sure that we're keeping our members safe. And over the course of the past 9 months or so, we've seen people who've been impacted in a very tragic way because of the virus. So we're going to do our part, and we're going to be safe, and we're going to be prudent, and we're going to make progress in the right direction.
If I had to guess, I would think that the Ben Washington congregation would really prefer to come back to the sanctuary, just based on how I've gotten to know the people. I think we love being around each other. Now, we are putting in place the ability to live stream, which means you can still be at home and get church, if you will. But I'm going to suggest that you come back to church when it is safe to do so. And live streaming is a great tool for the reaching for the rest of the world, and that would be great. But I'm thinking Ben Washington will come back to be here so we can see your faces in person. One of the things I wanted to mention with the COVID-19 thing, and then we're going to go and move on, but I wanted to say that the Bible tells us that if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, pray, and I will hear from heaven. That response came from Samuel asking God that, will you take care of us if we act right? If we don't sin, will it be okay? Or will you forgive us of our sins? Will you forgive us of our sins? If the people do this, will you forgive us? And that was God's response. This was after Samuel built, I believe it was Solomon built the temple. So that was God's response. But if we go to Deuteronomy, like we talked about this morning in Bible class, where if you obey God, God blesses you. If you're disobedient, he will send curses. A lot of people have wondered, do you think that coronavirus is something God is sending for punishment, or is it something that the devil is orchestrating? A lot of that's a question, because when you look at Deuteronomy and being disobedient, God is going to punish. But then you got like where I spoke about Solomon saying, the Lord answered the question.
Well, that's a great question. People. But we live in a fallen world.
Yeah.
We live in a world that, because of sin, which originated with Adam and Eve and has continued up to this day and time, plagues, pestilences, earthquakes, famines, those are all the result of disobeying God.
So that's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. To the question of whether the virus is a sign from God, I like to believe, and I do believe, and know for a fact that this did not catch God by surprise, although it caught us off guard. And through it all, I want to encourage and say to the members, in spite of everything that went on in 2020, God has still blessed us.
Yeah.
And for some of us, it has given us an opportunity to do some soul searching, to look at where we are in our relation with God. And when you're at home and quarantine and can't go to work, you find out a lot about what you believe and what you hope, and so I've been encouraged through the pandemic, in that I have seen so many creative ways in which the church has been able to function. And I've also seen how the love of people, especially here at Bend, Washington, has continued, where so many members were willing to help others who were in need. And that's because our mission has not changed. Even though our methods may have had to change for a season, our mission of sharing the gospel, the good news, being able to help those that are in need, that has continued. And so it's continuing because of our members and their faithfulness. We've been able to still baptize. We've been able to still fellowship through Zoom. I want to thank our deacons and our board for their leadership. I certainly want to thank, there are so many people, the IT team, Sister Vicki Garrett, Raphael Washington, Brother Alvin McQuarters, yourself, Sister Lanita, Candy Dunning. I want to thank the IT team for helping us to get off the ground and to actually make progress. But I also want to thank our deacons who reached out and called on their members to see if they're doing well, see if there's a need. And our board has been so responsive with the idea, whatever it takes for us to meet the needs of people. And so I've been encouraged. In time of crisis, you can actually tell what people believe. And so this has been a church that I feel like we've rolled up our sleeves and we've tried to do what's best for everyone. I'm encouraged by the help we got from so many volunteers with Family Promise, with our food pantry, with Many Helping Hands. Sister Young and Brother Young and Mark Spearman have done a great job with Many Helping Hands. And so we have been able to partner with a number of churches, a number of individuals, because the need has been there. And so although it's hard to preach to empty pews, we've still been able to reach out to so many people. And when you mentioned the fact that we will be live streaming, one of the benefits that has happened is that we've been able to reach more people through technology with the gospel and with Bible study. And I've actually had people who've come up to the church who have expressed interest in our church, want to know when we're going to come back, and we're making plans. I do believe that sometime in the first half of the year we will be back, and we will be able to have safe services, and so I'm excited.
I was going to ask you this question overall. I know that when it comes down to protest, I think I've seen a shift in the support of younger people these days from a lot of different nationalities, supporting causes that sort of, like they're tired of the government lying. And it seems as though they're finally seeing causes that are happening to them. If I bring up the Black Lives Matter situation, it seems as though there's been a garnering of people kind of coming more onto the bandwagon, younger generations. But my question was going to be, do you think overall that people are meaner? Overall, people are meaner.
Well, the scripture says in Matthew chapter 24, and I'm a preacher, so I'm going to use the Bible.
Okay.
That the love of many will wax cold.
Okay.
And so there is no doubt that in the last 4 years, we've seen a mean-spiritedness that has seemed to permeate our country. Things have been caught on cameras in which people have acted in a way that's certainly not Christ-like, that's not civilized. And we've seen people who are fed up and tired of what they perceive as racial injustice.
Mm-hmm.
But on
and that's what I was more or less talking
but
about.
on the other side, we've seen people who seemingly are happy with what they see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I think about the number of lives of black men and black women who have died needlessly, or who've been shot needlessly, simply because of the color of their skin, it certainly brings up within me a righteous indignation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Bible does say that there is such a thing as a righteous indignation. And so one of the things that I feel like as a pastor and as a leader is that we cannot sit on the sidelines and be silent. We have to actually speak out against those things that are hurting the people. And yes, I do believe we ought to remember the names of Breonna Taylor. We ought to remember the names of so many others who have died, and we ought to say enough is enough. Now, as a Christian, I'm actually calling on our leaders, our pastors, regardless of where your church is and regardless of the ethnic makeup of your congregation. Wrong is wrong and right is right, and you ought to speak about what the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about justice. Mm-hmm. The Bible talks about not being given to bribes, and we've seen so many incidents of injustice. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that there are people who are standing up, but we need to do it in a way that honors God. You know, one of the things that I've learned from the lessons of the civil rights movement is that the black church, the African American church, was a leader in that role, and I would say the time is here for the black church to rise again and take a leadership role and to speak out against those injustices. And I'm encouraged by a number of men and women who love the Lord, but who also believe that we ought to be able to stand up for truth. And the Bible is the truth. And if men would live out what the Bible teaches, Minister White, our society would be so much better.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned pastors taking a role now. I want to segue now into the Washington, D.C., or the raid on Washington, the raid on the White House. I saw the news story, and I meant to bring the clipping with me. There were a couple of pastors in Texas, pastors of churches, that sort of spoke to their congregation, you know, through media or however, about the thing in Washington, about being prepared. Somewhat of the insightful kind of speaking that our president has spoken to get people sort of riled up and ready for violence. And these are two pastors of two churches in Texas that basically was using the same kind of speech to get ready to be armed. I wish I would have brought the article and had the pastor's name. But getting to that point, our president seemed to be a person who incites, or who did incite what we saw. Yeah, our former president incites what we saw in the White House, you know, rioting, if you will. And then I want to get your opinion and your thoughts about that. But then at the same time, I've heard people say that if there had been black people raiding the White House, that it would have been a totally different kind of response from the White House and or law enforcement. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say the thing that we need to keep in mind that our tone, our verbiage, words can have a negative impact. And I have actually heard of the pastors that you mentioned in Texas that have incited their congregation and actually almost have led people to believe that this is a religious war and we're taking back our country. And I think the danger that I have seen is that people have mixed in their religion, their faith, with their culture, and so the rise of of white nationalism, as if you're standing up for the Lord. And it was interesting if you watch some of the scenes of the insurrection, and it was an insurrection, which was incited on January 6th by the President of the United States, in which they marched down to the Capitol of Congress, stopped a legally, by law, electoral process. There were people who had their Bibles. There were people, I saw a segment where they were actually in the halls of Congress, and the insurrectionists were actually sitting on the platform where Mike Pence would sit or Nancy Pelosi would sit, and they were being asked by the Capitol police officers to leave, and they actually wanted to pray. There are people who are convinced that they're doing the will of God by insurrection. There are people who believe that they're doing the will of God by the fact that an election has been stolen. And so what you're seeing is a cultural battle. I believe that there are people who actually believe that our country will go to pieces if Trump is not president. I think it's foolish to put your trust in one man or one party. The only person that you can trust 100% is the Lord Jesus Christ. But I do believe it needs to be said. Be very, very careful when you think you're doing the will of God, but your actions are not aligned with the Bible. And so I see what took place in Washington as not patriotic. I do not see it as the will of God. And God, according to Daniel chapter 2, God sets up kings and kingdoms. And so Romans chapter 13 talks about obeying those who are in authority. So the people who were protesting, they were not abiding according to the scriptures, but yet I see people like to use the name of God to validate what they're doing. And to me, Minister White, one of the most disheartening things that I have seen is the number of our evangelical brothers who, for political power or influence, have for 4 years or more ignored a lot of the things that are anti-Bible, the mean-spiritedness, the calling out people, the saying things derogatory of ethnic groups. Those kind of things are not biblical, are not in the line or with the will of God. But when you can condone someone's action, or if you're silent when these things are happening, you're complicit. And then for some people to dare use the name of Martin Luther King as if they're really on the side of civil rights for all is just not the case. I am praying that we have men and women who have integrity in office. I'm praying that we will have religious leaders who will not segue and who will speak up to truth regardless of who's in office. It doesn't matter to me if you're Democrat or Republican. You need to do what's right, and you need to have some integrity about you. And so that's what I'm praying. I'm praying that Christians and those who are leaders will stand up according to the Bible. And that scripture that you use, Second Chronicles 7:14, I believe is so true today. If God's people, those who are called by his name, would humble themselves and pray and seek his face. That's the first part. But the other part is to turn from their wicked ways. So there are some things that we need to do in the church. Because it's real hard to tell people to do right when you're not doing right. So if we turn from our wicked ways, then God said, then will I hear from heaven. Will forgive their sin, and then he said, I'll heal the land. So if we want healing in our country, it starts with humility, and it starts with prayer, and it starts with us forsaking our ways. There are things that we are doing that's not right. And so 2020 has allowed me and many others to say, Lord, what can I do better? And so hopefully that'll carry over this year. There's nothing wrong with doing a detoxing, so to speak, of all those things that need to get out of your system. And I would use the words of a wise man: darkness never moves out darkness. The only thing that can move out darkness is light. And so the light of the gospel is what we have to do if we want to change our country and change our communities. It's the light that moves out darkness. And so I'm committed to shining the light wherever I go.
That sounds like a beautiful ending, but I don't want to stop right now. I just got a couple more comments. That was a great segue into it. We'll see you next week or next time. Real quick, the historical former President Barack Obama, being the first black president of the United States, and now Vice President Kamala Harris. What a great event that is. Hopefully, she will do an excellent job. I'm rooting for her. I want her to do well, because by the time people see this, she may have already taken over. But I also wanted to mention the amount of National Guard troops that now have descended upon Washington for protections of the inauguration. However, like I said, the inauguration would have happened, Joe Biden would have been sworn in, Kamala Harris. I've met her several times too, by the way, and in fact, I've photographed Kamala Harris. She visited a church that I was a member of in Los Angeles.
So you're name dropping now.
I'm name dropping now. Macedonia Baptist Church, Pastor Shane B. Scott.
Okay.
He's still the pastor there, but I had the opportunity to meet her and take some pictures. But I think we are in for a very interesting year here in 2021 with all that has happened, all that I believe is going to happen, and I don't know what that is, but I am, in a sense, like you, praying for the best, and that God will prevail and His people will prevail and taking care of us, and that we can get back on the right track. And unless you have some other things to say.
Well, you know what I'm going to say is, for 4 years I prayed for the president and the vice president and Congress and the Supreme Court, and I'll continue to do so with the new president and the new administration. We need to pray for those in authority. We need to pray for peace, that we can live peaceably with all men. And so I am excited that barriers are being broken, and I'm excited that people can see that through hard work and through education, anyone can rise to the level of serving at the highest office or position, vice president, president. And so I think for a lot of people, and myself included, I am definitely, there's a sense of pride when you see people who have reached a level that has not been attained before. And so I wish the Biden-Harris administration the very best, just like I wish the Trump-Pence administration the very best, because I want our country to do well. And so I'm going to pray, but at the same time, I think it's important that we hold each other accountable. So like when Trump and Pence weren't doing what I believe was biblical, I spoke up, and I plan to do the same thing with this new administration. But I'm praying that there will be some healing. I'm praying that people will be kinder. I'm praying that people will be more accepting of the fact that we need to work together. So I've been encouraged by what I've heard thus far, and I think I'll be encouraged by what I see in the coming days. But the first thing we need to do is to get this virus under control, and then we need to make plans for being able to re-enter into our sanctuary again, and just be nice. So there may be some changes coming, in how we worship and how we serve, but we still serve the same God. He has not changed. And so I'm looking forward to having all of us back in fellowship real soon.
And God is still in control.
He's still in control.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching this version or our episode of the Pastor's Corner. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless.